Welcome to the Hey Brother podcast. Today, I sit down and interview Father Ambrose He's been a good friend of me and my wife and our families for 4 or 5 years now. He baptized my oldest son back when COVID was happening. He had this big burly beard, and I love my friendship with him. He, currently is vicar, parochial vicar in a parish not too far from us. Actually, it was a family, our group of parishes, something our archdiocese did. We talk about this in the podcast a little bit, or the interview that you're about to hear a little bit, where our diocese combined a bunch of parishes. So he has 6 of them that he gets to go around and travel to. And so he's not too far away, and we love him in our life. He pursues the Lord in such a beautiful way. And intimacy and prayer, and also through the intellect. He's currently studying a PhD in theology, and that gets brought up a little bit in our interview. So, without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this interview with Father Ambrose, and I'll roll the intro music, and you guys will get to hear that. All right, God bless. In today's world, Catholic men face countless challenges on the road to holiness. Addiction, anger, self-doubt, relationship struggles, and so much more. These battles can leave us stuck in mediocrity. But the truth is, we're made for more. The world needs good men. Welcome to the Hey Brother podcast, where we dive into these real struggles and share from our own experience as brothers and husbands and fathers. Together, we'll explore how to overcome life's challenges and become the men God created us to be. So grab a seat, brother, and remember, you're not alone.
Alberione, founder of the Paulist sisters, the social media nuns.
Okay.
Is that not striking any bells?
No.
Okay, that's fine.
We're recording now.
That's fine. Yeah, no problem. Does that mean you have to introduce me?
I will at some point.
You will at some point. Okay, yeah. How much stuff do you before the hey guys, welcome to the blank podcast kind of right? Yeah.
Did you have guests on the parish podcast?
Well, so that was the difficulty. So it was quasi interviewing a rotating cast of staff members. Okay. The purpose of the podcast was to kind of open up a window into inside parish business for invested parishioners, or the whole Beacons of Light process where we're restructuring parishes. It seems like this black box, and then hey, your church is closing, right? But if any of my parishioners are listening, we're not closing churches. Just a brief aside there. There's a lot of people who do care a lot about their parishes, and we wanted those people to be more informed, to feel like they were more part of the process, and to be more open and transparent about all the decisions that we're making. And so just bringing a staff person, let's talk about what actually happens when we decide to use this parish for this event instead of this other parish, right? And so just as a way to increase communication during the pastoral planning process. But it got hard to invite guests and come up with a schedule for that, and so we're rebranding in January. Okay. And we're not actually rebranding anything, we're just reformatting it. It's just going to be me and Father Blenman. Okay. And which will be fun. He's fun to hang out with.
Yeah, I've talked with him a couple times. He's interesting. He's more direct than what makes probably most people comfortable.
That's a good thing, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, I think a lot of pastors probably err on the opposite of that. Yeah. But that's good. So the whole podcast endeavor was to keep people informed through the transition time. Do you find it more effective for certain demographics? I mean, I'm guessing most of the older church ladies aren't plugging in, listening. Yeah. Maybe they are. I don't.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. My communication strategy is shotgun method.
Okay.
Just take the central stuff that you want to communicate, which before it's anything about Beacons of Light, it's about Jesus, right? The gospel.
Yeah.
And just blast that out in as many different discrete pellets as possible. Okay. And then some of those will hit most people.
There we go. Shotgun blast. That's good.
Bulletin, website, homilies, social media, poster at the so just hit as many different things as you can.
Yeah. Nice. Interesting. Can you tell like if you're hitting people like or like a review or downloads or views?
Yeah. It was doing pretty good. We got
Yeah.
typically a couple hundred listens per episode, which as a percentage of our weekly mass attendance is somewhere between 10 and 20%.
Wow, yeah,
which is like that's great. Like that's all we wanted. And some episodes got a lot more than that. Whenever we did something that people were interested in, like we hire a new principal, and then all the school parents go and listen to that, right? Which then So you have to play it smart. We got a really, really good communications director for the family of parishes here. Jason, shout out to my guy Jason.
Nice.
And he's really great at talking that through with me. And I ran and managed it because he has plenty to do already. But just the strategy of that, targeting the audiences, how to like the vision for what the podcast does, how it contributes to the overall vision of the parish, like all those kinds of things.
That's sweet. Yeah. It'd be cool to run like a side-by-side analysis of like how many people are listening to the podcast versus reading the bulletin versus like information retention, right? Like, I'm sure if you're listening, you're going to retain a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that's, we could talk about podcast communication versus bulletin another time. But today we're talking about Brotherhood.
Right.
And I wanted to welcome everyone in that's listening to the Hey Brother podcast, where we look at how brotherhood, sharing a relationship with other guys, helps us become the men that we're called to be, that God's created us to be. Did you do like the sign? Okay, I thought you were doing like the low sign.
No. That's off. I don't think that would show up. I think that's below the camera.
Below the camera. Okay. The sign that you see, and then I gotta hit you.
No. Like this, like yes. Chefkiss.jpg.
All right. .jpg.
Yeah, that's right.
So welcome in. Today we got Father Ambrose that we're interviewing. I've known you since 2018, 2017?
2019, I think, when started at the we both started at the same parish at the same time.
Right.
You as the youth minister, me as the young, naive parochial vicar.
Yeah, there we go.
I could have probably swapped those adjectives and it would have still worked. You were like freshly married, no kids yet.
I was pretty young and naive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like one time I was like in the vestibule outside of St. Peter, and a lady came up to me and like, are you Father Ambrose? I'm like just wearing like regular clothes. I'm like, no, that's not me.
I don't think we look alike at all.
We don't, but at that point, like people had no idea.
Right.
Like they just saw a new young guy and they're like, are you the priest?
That's right. Or you it's not possible that there's like some young man who isn't a seminarian or a priest at the parish. Like that just doesn't happen.
Right. Although I think that's changing in church culture. I don't know. I think I'm seeing more and more like young adults like in parish life, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's actually interesting. The Dayton young adult community has been having a difficulty with that. Normally it's the other way around. It's a bunch of girls and no guys show up.
Right.
But we were having a ton of bros.
Yeah.
And like it would be like 15, 18 guys and 2 girls. And so the girls stopped coming. It was just bros.
Yeah, a reversal.
Interesting problem to have.
I don't think it's like exclusive to Dayton. I feel like that's like a trend that's happening for whatever reason. But
cannot diagnose that on a podcast right now.
Yeah.
It's a different podcast, different.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like something. So like, when I start is like to know you, Father Ambrose, like kind of day in the life of Father Ambrose a little bit, or a week in the life of Father Ambrose. And I know you well enough to know pondering questions like that are probably something you'd be interested in.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, take me into what is you've been here at this parish for what, 2 years?
Yeah, this is 2.5. And we're in my office right now. I invited Nick over to share space with me here.
There we go.
Worked out a little bit better for the recording, and it seems like the studio is mobile enough.
Yeah, mobile enough.
Yeah, the wonders of technology these days.
Yeah.
And so, it's interesting. So we were at the beginning joking about the beacons of light, the parish process, and having to communicate with parishioners. So I've got 6 parishes. I'm one of 4 priests in this family of parishes, and so there's a lot of driving involved. So Yeah. So yes, let's see. Sunday, got up early. I had the early 8 a.m. mass out in Jamestown, which is at the other corner of Greene County.
Oh, wow.
It's a tiny little parish that fits 80 people jam packed.
Okay.
And there were about 75 people there, right? And they're there like that. They get that many full every Sunday.
Wow.
Confessions before mass. So I got to be out there by like 7:30. Then a little parish breakfast after mass.
Every Sunday?
Right, not every Sunday. This was a special one.
Okay.
Just, kind of at the end of their first semester of religious ed, and right. So it's like a 100-mile round trip for driving weekend masses when I head out there.
Yep.
Which is a lot of car time. Listen to podcasts, or pray a rosary, figure out the finer points of my homily on the drive out. Right. So like that kind of driving happens all of the time.
You said it was an hour and a half round trip?
I mean, roughly.
Wow.
Typically I have that mass and then another mass at a different parish, but luckily Sunday I had just the one mass. And then today we've got this is something that we do. This is part of the priesthood right here, probably, more or less. And then I've got a meeting with another priest, Father Jedediah, great guy, my classmate.
Is he associate pastor here, or is he?
He was at this parish with me for like 3 months, and then he is out on the west side of Dayton now. He's not really even Dayton anymore, Eaton.
Okay.
And he and I will be meeting to talk about I am giving the talks for our parish Lenten mission coming up in March.
Okay.
And I need to hit up Reverend Father Jedediah for some ideas and some brainstorming of how to approach that, some things to say. Which our meetings are on a disc golf course.
Nice.
It's like, because it's one of those, I always have to have something to say.
Yeah.
Right, like I have some type of meeting with a parishioner and they've got some problem and I've got to have some homily multiple times a day. Yesterday I had 2 different masses, 2 different homilies. I had the weekday morning mass we've got the Chesterton Academy of St. Joseph here in our school building at this parish. And so I've got a bunch of like trad former homeschool high school kids in the morning.
Yeah, they take over the church. I mean, like the first few pews.
It's great. I love having them. They're great. And then after that, heard confessions. Did some other office work, and then I drove to Dayton Correctional Institution. Had mass in prison. Welcomed one of the inmates into the church.
Wow.
Conditional baptism, confirmation.
Praise
right,
God.
And it was Monday, but we've got permission from the Archbishop to do the preceding Sunday's Mass. So I had the Monday of the 3rd week of Advent with the Chesterton students, and then 3rd Sunday of Advent, so pink again, and conditional baptism, confirmation. So very different homily,
Sure.
very different audience, very different sets of people for confession. In those 2 masses, like a couple hours apart. Then driving back and forth between churches for meetings.
Yeah.
All of the time.
All the time.
Which you probably know about. You were doing that life for a little while.
Yeah, for just a little bit. Like we're in the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, and they did the pastoral planning project.
Beacons of Light,
which sends dread through some people's spines.
Yeah.
I was happy about it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good opportunity. I didn't stick around to the parish long enough to see the opportunity. But yeah, the whole driving from one parish 10 minutes away to the next parish, we were lucky. We bounced back and forth between like 2 primarily. I don't know how much. I mean, as a priest, you're probably splitting more time in different places. So
yeah. It's how it goes. Tomorrow I'll be at St. Bridget for a school mass, and then hang out with the 7th and 8th graders in the school for a little bit.
Nice.
And then go over to St. Luke for their school confessions. Then I have to get back to Mary Albert Christians for got a permanent deacon coming in for a spiritual direction meeting.
Okay.
And then back to St. Luke in the evening to teach our CIA.
Nice.
Right? And so like it's just
and you're off classes right now too, right?
It's so great. That's the only reason I can do our CIA, because our CIA is the same night as my doctoral seminars.
Yeah.
And so I get like
that usually eats up one day of the week, the doctoral seminars.
yeah, I'm getting my doctorate in theology at the University of Dayton.
Whoop, whoop. Go
Flyers. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the RCIA director, Spencer Hargadon, whom great guy.
Yeah.
He'd be a fun one for this podcast, probably.
Yeah, I'll have to get him on sometime. I think it'd be fun.
He was like, so what dates can you teach? And I'm like, I have exactly 3. And they're all holidays, so I don't have school.
Nice.
And so, yeah. Which that actually, since we're talking about Brotherhood, when we first started Beacons of Light, all of the priests across these 6 parishes were kind of new together. We had not worked together as priests before.
Okay.
And so we were talking about how to manage this, how to do this, because like each of us lives at a different rectory. None of us live together.
Yeah.
So I live here. Father Mike's over in Yellow Springs. Father Blenman's down in St. Bridget. Father Beatles at St. Luke. Slightly different set of priests and locations than when we first started out, but same. Doesn't ultimately make a difference.
Yeah.
And then so like we have to intentionally put effort into developing fraternity.
Okay.
Spending time with each other every single week. So Thursdays are our priest days.
That's cool.
Get together for a priest meeting, talk about various stuff across the family of parishes, business stuff. Being on the same page is so important.
Yeah.
So if you've got a family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've got mom.
Yep.
And then you've got dad, right? And so the kids are like, hey, Dad, can we do a thing? And Dad's like, no. What do?
They go ask mom.
Ask mom, right? Now imagine there's 4.
Yeah.
And so you get a no from dad, the other dad. It's okay, we got one more dad. Or Father Mike will do it for us. And it turns out, no, Father Mike's the mean priest. He won't do it for us. Anyway, right? But so we have to be on the same page. Yeah. And more importantly than being on the same page in terms of administrative stuff, there's got to be this real brotherhood, fraternity, and Christian charity and unity between us.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's this pastoral consulting firm, the Amazing Parish.
Okay.
And they've got these cute little blocks that you fold them different ways.
They're real cute.
And
Nifty.
they show you different things about the way a parish is supposed to run. And one of those diagrams has taken up a lot of my brain space over the past couple of years. And it's like, so it's envisioning a parish where there's like just one priest, one pastor working with, right? So there's just pastor and the priest, like the central vision of the leader in the center that spreads out to a close circle of leaders, and then to staff and volunteers more broadly, and then out to the parish more generally. And you can kind of envision this as a single cell organism. Yeah. Right. And so there's the nucleus with the information on how everything gets run and done, and then there's various different methods whereby that information is taken to where it needs to be in order to do something at a particular time, right? And all of them separated by one of my favorite biology words, semi-permeable membranes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It's high school biology, man. And
which means the membranes are partially permeable, or
that's right,
you can go through them, kind of.
Sometimes in specific ways, right?
Specific ways.
And which is right. It's a good analogy for what's going on here, because we are supposed to be one single united community. Yeah. And which is interesting here because we've got 6 different parishes, 6 different distinct communities that are all joined together administratively, ecclesially, but still maintain some of their own identity. And instead of just one priest leader, you've got 4 where one is ultimately in charge, but the other 3 have to be united enough with him that there's still just one nucleus. And so we have to get together and really share life, pray together, laugh, joke with each other, develop that fraternity so that we're not just administratively on the same page while still being separate, separate entities. We have to share one life. Yeah. And that then sets the tone, and that shared life of prayer and fraternity and unity gets spread out and communicated across those levels, right? So there's our family leadership team that's getting together and meeting later this afternoon. So I'll be driving down after I meet with Father Jedediah, I'll be down at the family leadership team meeting at one of our other churches, and there's some of the priests, some of the other like large directors of multiple things within parishes, some of the principals, right, of our schools.
Yeah.
And that community has
the leadership team community. Yeah.
Then it's kind of like, all right, so there's the priests, and we're together as this unity, praying together, working together to advance the gospel, and then that spreads out to the leadership community, and they spread it out to their staff members, and then that spreads out to all of the different aspects of parish life, so that there's this one single culture across different levels, and it has to start with that shared life of prayer.
Yeah, that kind of models like Christ, right? Like in like the original kind of setup of what church looked like.
Exactly, Christ and his ministry. That's where Amazing Parish says that they take this idea. I think it's also the same as what you would read in some self-help book for CEOs.
Sure. Turns out Jesus was the best for organizational leadership, huh?
That's right. Jesus was Jesus is the model CEO.
Yeah. You're in pain for saying that?
Yeah. Like, I meant it ironically, but it still hurt.
It still hurt.
I think Jesus would have some very, very strong words for some CEOs today.
Yeah, I'm going to pull back any punches. I was listening to a priest talk in a homily, and he was talking about, or was it the deacon? Somebody was preaching, and they were talking about how John the Baptist would be like just tearing people apart today if he came back and like was preaching in today's world. I'm like, I hear what you're saying, but like, I'm like, I think Jesus would probably be the more provocative like preacher in today's world than John the Baptist. I don't know enough about John the Baptist, but it seemed like John the Baptist was pretty like, hey, repent, like a little more like on the mercy side, not necessarily like I'm gonna hit you in the face. But maybe I'm missing something.
There's some real strong words in John the Baptist for the Pharisees, calls them a brood of vipers.
Okay.
Jesus also does not pull punches. Neither of them do, but always. Yeah, I mean, you would not say that Jesus is not being merciful when he tells the Pharisees that they're whitewashed tombs.
Yeah.
And in fact, is an expression of his mercy. And so the I think we got a camera issue here.
We do. That's okay. You can keep going.
I can go. Sweet. I will continue. Maybe. And so if I can think at the same time that you're messing with the camera, that's tough. That's asking a lot, man.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. So the God is one, right? Right. And so you're going to have an even harder time thinking and talking than I will. And so for St. Thomas Aquinas, the divine simplicity is sort of like an organizational principle for understanding the rest of the attributes which we ascribe to God or which we use to think about God.
Yep. And
so his divine unity or simplicity is... right, like the way that we integrate his mercy and his justice, right? We don't say that God's mercy is separate from his justice. God is all of his attributes. He is mercy. He is justice. He is love. He is goodness, which is to say that mercy and justice in God are actually the same thing, considered in different ways, looking at it from the outside, right? Because we look at God from the outside because we are not God.
We're not God.
and we're not even capable of comprehending God in who he is.
Yeah.
And so when we think about God, in his justice, in the way that he sends people to hell, in the way that he ultimately brings about a punishment for evil actions and these other sorts of things. And then we also think about mercy, where he pardons sinners, where he restores people to the life of grace like he did with Peter after Peter's denial, right? Like those are separate concepts for us. But in God, those are the same thing.
Yeah.
And there's no separation between God doing one thing and God doing another thing. He is.
He is.
Divine simplicity is super, super important. And so Jesus then telling the Pharisees that they're hypocrites and that they're the blind leading the blind
is mercy.
Is the same thing as like, woman, has no one condemned you, then neither do I condemn you.
Well, yeah. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about that. It's just like, so it's like, that's what they needed to hear. The Pharisees, right? Like they needed to hear something like that to like even like begin to penetrate their hearts, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
and many of them did convert. Many of them
Yeah.
did. After, like, it says there's a line in Acts where even a lot of the leaders of the Jewish people were converting.
yeah, praise God.
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. I was just thinking about that yesterday morning in my homily for the Chesterton school kids. There's a line in, I forget even which gospel we were reading, Matthew, I think. And Jesus is talking to, the Pharisees come and ask Christ the question about, like, so where's John the Baptist getting all of this, right? And Jesus says, well, no, they ask Jesus, where are you getting all of this? And Jesus says, well, where was John the Baptist getting it? And they're like, well, if we say that he was getting it from God, Jesus will ask us, why didn't you listen to him?
Yeah.
And then if we say it was from just human beings, this was his own weird thing, then the people are going to get mad at us because they all thought John was a prophet. So I don't know. We'll just say we don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And so how do you get that interior discussion amongst the Pharisees into the gospel passage?
Yeah.
Obviously, Jesus knows what they're saying because he's God and he's omniscient, but it's not like Jesus then wrote the gospel, right? Matthew wrote the gospel. And so it's one of those Pharisees became Christian after the death of Christ, was a member of the Christian community, and retold the story.
Yeah.
That then makes it into the gospel passage. And that Pharisee's conversion and insight into his own opposition to Christ
Informs the gospel.
Becomes the gospel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
God is like, even like the specific opposition to the working of God's plan becomes incorporated into his.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's great. Good stuff.
It's good.
All the good stuff. I mean, so
like,
Jesus is the perfect CEO. He's got all of a plan for all of these things, right?
Yeah.
Nothing escapes his pastoral planning initiatives.
Nothing.
Which
Nothing fails to land.
and then even then, several people rejected him, and so we
Yeah.
should not feel bad when we're rejected.
Right. Yeah. As priest, in particular, and anyone who's like taking the gospel to places, but I know priest bear a special like place for sharing in the rejection of Christ.
That can also go to our heads, and so we got to be careful with it.
Yeah.
Just the fact that people disagree with us is not necessarily a sign that we're shedding the gospel. That might just be we're being a jerk. That's a possibility.
Yeah. That's I want to come back to what you're saying about like the priestly fraternity that you have, but in a second, I want to first like just kind of dive a little more deeper into. So you've been a priest for the archdiocese for 5 years. 5 years, man. For some reason, I think it's longer than that, but that's.
You've had 2 kids in that period of time?
Yeah, 2 kids. Yeah, so life's gone very fast and very slow at the same time.
Right.
Over that span. So 5 years. What was yeah? Can you like we don't have to go like into like full blown like conversion vocation story, but like maybe 3 or 4 minute like where was Father Ambrose before he became Father Ambrose?
Yeah. So a lot of the ways of talking about conversion stories and stuff like that are difficult for me. I don't do very well with those.
Sure.
There's not one point at which I can say like this is when it happened. Right. So I'm at the archdiocese like Advent day of reflection for parish teams, and here's models of evangelization and ways that your parish culture can be a culture of witness to the gospel and stuff like that. And they always like point to these critical decision moments where which to me sounds kind of Protestant because like I don't know, I was baptized Catholic as an infant. Being Catholic was basically always my primary identity. Mm-hmm. I strayed from that pretty wildly and massively on a significant number of occasions, but always in ways I was able to justify to myself.
Sure.
That no, this still counts. I'm still better than all those other people outside the church, right? Had a bunch of different conversions at a bunch of different places and a bunch of different aspects, but none of them ever amounted to like one single St. Augustine, like
come to Jesus,
reading and weeping about the Gospels, and all of a sudden, like no, like that is not my story.
It's funny because it's coming on the heels of I just interviewed Bobby last week.
He's
and that is his story.
He's great. Bobby's
there's like
which is fine.
Big moments. Yeah.
So like the central Christian drama of the power of Christ, death to self, conversion, redemption, sanctification, right? That's a bunch of different words that all describe the same reality. I wouldn't call that a process.
Okay.
Right. It happens at every moment.
Yeah.
And if you're careful and prayerful and you really dive into your own life and consider it from a radically Christocentric perspective, you should be able to tell that kind of conversion story about literally everything.
Yeah.
And so I spend a lot of time thinking and praying. One of the reasons I go out and do my meetings with my brother priests on a disc golf course is because I need that time outside to think. It's good. I also just play by myself a lot out in nature.
Yeah, in nature.
To shout out to a different conversation we were having before recording the podcast, I think. Is it weird that like I have to go outside to be in nature? Like I didn't create any of the like wood or weird ceiling panels or light bulbs that are inside this indoor artificial environment. I don't know if I'm still getting like brought up in camera with my air quotes, but at any rate, right, like you have to have that time to think and to ponder and to really dive into yourself in prayer and silence to be able to preach all the time and say anything interesting or helpful to people.
Yeah.
And so really that dive into yourself. Whereas St. Teresa of Avila teaches, like, even if you're not aware of it, even if you haven't done the work of going into your interior castle and organizing all of the rooms and making it, by grace, of course, a fitting dwelling for the king, like, Christ is at the center.
Yeah.
And he reigns. Even, like, Christ reigns over the souls in hell, even.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't get rid of him.
Yeah.
He wins, always. He is king. And so coming to recognize him in there and recognizing his presence and his influence and the ways in which he shaped all of the aspects of your life and giving more and more over to gratitude and recognizing the ways in which Christ has redeemed every aspect of yourself and the way in which even your sins have contributed to your salvation and the salvation of others, which is so wild, is a necessary part of that kind of interior journey of prayer.
Yeah.
And so
like the interior world, like, is that something that like was formed in you by your parents? Is that something that came naturally? Is that
buddy,
something that like
I wish it came more naturally.
Yeah.
So the definitely prayed a lot with my family when I was growing up. I wanted to be a priest from a very young age. I was 7 when I first started talking about it. And then that's what I told everyone I wanted to be when I was growing up, which is an interesting time to do that because I was 11 in 2002 when all of the like spotlight scandals broke. And so as I'm like growing up and telling people that I wanted to be a priest, they're like, why? You don't look like the kind of person who wants to rape kids.
Oh, yikes. Yeah.
Which is a very wild way to grow up and to think about the priesthood. And so I got a little bit distracted on that path by these weird things called girls.
Oh,
when I was in high school.
I can attest as a married man, girls are weird indeed.
And they're fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like, how do they tick? I don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just want to find out. And so I dated this one girl in high school, and then in college, dated this other girl for 3 years.
Okay.
And then ultimately was really conflicted, had this moment of prayer, to pick a moment, where we were praying together in the college chapel, and I was like, Jesus, I know that I was thinking about the priesthood before, and that's what I wanted to do, but I kind of really like this girl, so can that be my vocation, please?
Yeah.
Right, which ultimately I think boils down to, so like, I know your will is nice, but like, can we have mine instead?
Yeah.
It's really, it's an honest prayer.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it's good, it's authentic, and Christ works with that, but it's the opposite of a good prayer, in that I'm just literally asking God to do what I want instead of
conforming
asking God to help me do what he wants.
Yeah.
But like I said, he takes that and he works with that. And honesty with God is the first step towards like being honest with God about what you want is then a step towards realizing that what you want isn't what God wants, and then being able to do what God wants and having him work in your soul.
Yeah. It's almost like a step before that of like being honest with ourselves, like and like realizing like I actually want to marry this woman, right? Like, and then being able to take that to God
and feeling conflicted about that internally and being honest with myself about that feeling of conflict, whatever. And so then at the time, the Reverend Father Kyle Schnippel was the vocations director for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, and now I think you're pastor.
Yeah. We go to church with Father Kyle. Yep.
Yeah, he's great. And also I went down to his office downtown Cincinnati. He doesn't remember this at all.
Yeah.
And I was like,
he doesn't claim to remember any vocation story. I like talked to him about like several priests
and so I had been talking to him about becoming a priest for years. We first met when I was in high school, and he was a brand new vocations director, and he had been talking to me and like journeying with me in that regard for a long time. And I was like, so okay, I think I'm gonna ask this girl to marry me. And he was like, okay, if that's your discernment or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Like he was very not helpful. Hopefully that's the dog on the podcast. Someone outside, probably in the backyard. And did propose. We would have been married 10 years ago. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
You can imagine by the Roman collar and the fact that I'm on this podcast as Father Ambrose.
Right.
And that was rough.
Yeah.
Like you have this whole plan for your life, and half of the foundation is this other person, and like you build this tower, to use an analogy from the Gospels.
Right.
And you think you know what it's going to take. You think you know how much it's going to cost, and you're ready to give yourself. But the other person has to be giving themselves the same way, to the same extent, and like then half the tower vanishes and the whole thing collapses and falls, right? Like it's totally like your life ends in a very real way, because the life that you envisioned yourself living and the life that you'd planned out is done. It's gone. It's dead. So a real death to self there. Shortly after that, still feeling very broken up. Kind of like just awash in a sea of confused emotions and not sure what I'm going to do. I was getting my master's degree in theology at the University of Dayton. The thought was that, all right, I'm not going to be a priest. I will just be a married theologian and still teach people about Jesus.
There you go.
And then as a typical grad student, I slept through my alarm, didn't get up for the mass I was planning to go to at one church. And so I went to masstimes.org and found a later mass, a 12:30 p.m. mass at St. Henry's.
Okay.
Close to the Dayton Mall, and one Father Sean Landenwich was there helping out and saying masses. Now, Father Sean Landenwich, when he was a seminarian, was helping out at retreats that I was going to as a high schooler.
Okay.
And so he recognized me.
Okay.
After like 8 years and growing a beard.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, hey, you were thinking about the priesthood. Are you still thinking about that? And I'm like, well, I guess I'm single. At the same time, I'm also like starting to talk to this other girl from college, and she invites me down to go to Mardi Gras in New Orleans with her.
Yeah.
The same weekend that Father Sean is like, hey, you should go to this discernment retreat at the seminary. And I wish I could say that the Lord just won me over with his grace.
Yeah.
And so I picked this. No, I just couldn't afford a plane ticket.
Yeah.
Because I was a graduate student living on like breadcrumbs and a promise that they might pay you eventually. And so for purely practical and economic reasons, I chose to go to the seminary.
Yeah.
And just adoration. First night that we got there, praying with the seminarians, Jesus just like took a 2x4 to the side of my head.
Yeah.
Or some soft word of consolation to my heart, whichever metaphor you want to use there.
Whichever resonates more deeply.
Yeah,
with
it's
you.
Most
guys probably are like in the realm of the 2x4.
That's right. I mean, they're both very effective, and I feel like they're actually the same thing. Again, divine simplicity,
there
man.
We go. Like
the 2x4 is this message of deep consolation for your soul. It's just the consolation that you need right now is kind of violent. And at that point, I just knew I needed to go to seminary. And then I think it was the mutual discernment between the formation team of priests, the bishop, other seminarians. The Brotherhood in the seminary is awesome. Just the there's like 80-ish guys, 60 to 80, closer to 100 now. The seminary's doing really well here in Cincinnati. all focused on the same goal.
Yeah.
All praying together every day, just hanging out, playing sports, like just brutally roasting each other, studying together. Like we're all in the same building.
Yeah.
A lot of basketball, a lot of soccer, and fencing club. The boxing club had to get banned.
Oh no. I'm sure there's a story behind that.
There is definitely a story behind that. And like weightlifting, like it was hanging out in other guys' rooms, drinking bourbon, and it was just awesome. Like,
yeah.
just really beautiful fraternity, and it was that kind of environment where the priesthood, giving your life to Christ together, not individually, right? There's so many ways in which we talk about conversion, about giving yourself to Christ as a disciple in this individual way, but it's not.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing about the faith which is merely individual. There's this constant tension between the communal and the individual, because I have to be doing it personally, individually, in order to belong to the community, but it's really the community that gives it this meaning and this shape, this context. And so
I think particularly as guys, that's a challenging concept.
It is,
right?
It
like,
is.
To hear the seminary is doing well is great, but it's just like
sometimes
it's like so easy for guys to kind of drift off and do their own thing, right? And like just be isolated. But there's this great analogy we talk about in the training program that I went through, using a bevel gear analogy, and it talks about horizontal transcendence and vertical transcendence. So how are we transcending out to ourselves, to others, and then transcending up to God? And it talks about a bevel gear, how the more horizontal transcendence we experience, the like more that movement towards God works, and vice versa. The more like vertical transcendence, the more we're actually growing closer to others. And I don't know if you know much about bevel gears, but apparently that's how they work. They like, it's hard to describe on like if you see it on the camera, you can see like what I'm trying to say, but it's like a horizontal gear and a vertical gear.
I
like,
got you.
Grinding together.
I like it. It's a good analogy. Yeah. And it's one of the then really important things, and the difficulties, something that I kind of have to, it takes continuing work to maintain that fraternity.
Yeah.
So especially in if you think back to the beginning when we were talking of driving around between 6 different parishes and meetings, and I've got my own set of employees who report to me. Other priests have other employees who report to them, right? And different areas of responsibility between the 6 different parishes. It's really, really, really easy to see first the parishioners as obstacles to the vision that I have for this parish working well. And like, if I could just get them, if I could just have other parishioners who liked traditional liturgy more, I could have a better parish, right? Or something like, but no, like these people are actually the ones I've been assigned to.
Yeah.
So that's one temptation to individualism there. And then the second one is with the other priests. Like, these priests don't see things the way I do. They don't share the exact same motivations or priorities that I do.
Yeah.
Right? It takes work and intentionality and self-sacrifice and humility to be able to maintain that fraternity, to give time to each other, to develop that fraternity, and to maintain that real beautiful fraternal sense of all cooperating towards the same goal, which made up such a huge part of that environment in seminary that was so beneficial, in which I discerned the priesthood.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, even like I was talking about meeting Father Jedediah to talk about a parish mission, but like also it's just because unless we get together and spend intentional time together, iron sharpening iron, like, it doesn't work. And it's so easy to fall into laziness, to fall into like just complacency regarding those relationships, not pushing each other, not giving up time to meet with each other, be with each other, respond to each other's needs. And so it's a place that takes constant growth and recognition.
Yeah, you see that like intentionality with you and your brother priest here at your parish,
but then also between other priests in the archdiocese, right? I'm in a big class of 9 priests ordained together.
Okay, which is probably like the largest in a while.
In like 40 years, and we might get eclipsed, not this year but next year.
Okay, wow.
They've got 10, and so we were joking with one of the seminary professors, like, hey, maybe you should like bump one of those guys up. I'm sure one of them is ready to get ordained so that they don't break our record.
Right.
Don't want any of them to leave, right? But
Right. Yeah, that's funny. Just bumped up or held back, like
something like that. Yeah. It's like, no, they're good guys though.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, like that intentionality of like forming brotherhood among the priests. Like, I feel like it's something that is really good to see lived out. I don't feel like it's really lived out in a lot of places. Unfortunately,
it's hard.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that's like something people don't like really account for. The same thing when we're talking about like the internal conversion of like God's will versus my will. Like, I don't want to go let go my will. That's hard. Like, like we want to.
Let's talk about the nice parts where you're good, you're great, God loves you. Let's not talk about the parts where like I have been crucified and now I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Like, that's the tough part.
Yeah, and you feel that in pursuing fellowship with other guys.
Yeah.
And like, I guess it's like, do you see that in like lay relationships as well, right?
Yeah,
like,
no, for sure. I've got a lot of really beautiful friendships with some great men as well. My family are just wonderful.
Yeah.
Developing fraternity with my dad.
Yeah.
Like, that's been a beautiful thing. My biological brothers. And then also just the reality of some parishioners, like specifically as men, other men in the parish, right? Because there's a difference in authority, which is real, necessary, but then also like you have to be brothers at the same time as you're a father. That those aren't in opposition.
Interesting. Yeah.
To carry that natural analogy I did just a second ago with my own dad. But then also there's some other great guys, some good men from former parishes where I'm not their priest anymore.
Sure.
Just to pick one name of a guy we both know, Jacob Stange, great guy, another one who ought to be on the show.
Yeah, I've talked to him about it.
They're like, and it's always funny, right? Like, there's just something about men and like doing it my own way. And like fraternity there's this, so like you can tell immediately in like 30 seconds of conversation with someone whether or not they're a bro.
Yeah.
Which is like,
is that intuitive or do you have a checklist?
It's intuitive,
Okay.
but there's also things that you can tell. Like, there's an easygoingness, like doesn't get phased easily.
Sure.
Like, and bro recognizes bro.
Bro recognizes bro.
And like, this is actually not in any way, shape, or form a guarantee that the other bro is a good person.
Yeah.
But they might, like, there are like, it's a human form of relation to other men that can be misused wildly.
Yeah.
In certain environments, right? But like, if you recognize you do it, like, oh yeah, that's a bro, I can work with him. Like, that's great. Like, I know how to talk to him. Jacob Stange is not a bro in that way.
What is, sorry?
He's not a bro in that way.
Who is not? Oh,
Jacob.
Okay. Not a bro in that way.
Right? Like, I had real difficulty interacting with him.
Interesting.
Initially. Like, I got along with his wife, Melissa, amazing right from the start. We're both artists.
Yeah.
It took a little bit of work to figure out how to interact with Jacob, because I don't think we're the same kind of guy.
Interesting. Huh.
But I love him. He's one of my best friends. And we do work really well together now, both in the professional sense. I'm on the board of the nonprofit that he runs.
Yeah.
But also just in a fraternal friendship sense.
Yeah.
We have a ton of the same interests, but we just approach them so differently that at first it was really difficult to work that out. But then like you can figure out, you can transcend those like natural differences in approach and personality.
Yeah.
And then really develop beautiful relationships that then stretch and push. But it takes that intentionality, that willingness to detach myself from my way of approaching these relationships.
Yeah. That's interesting. I would have like never guessed that. Because like,
it was weird.
I like, because I've never seen you guys in the pre stages before where you guys are at now. Like, I've always seen you guys as close friends, and like I've never like had that. Like, I'm a phlegmatic person, so like I'm a people pleaser, and so like I don't grind gears with a lot of people. But
I'm a hardcore melancholic, and he is very choleric.
Yeah. That's fair.
He has a particular vision. He's like, a way we're gonna do things. This is what we're doing. I'm on this mission. He is extremely driven.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, I want to just like sit and stew on it and think about it, and then after like maybe 10, 15 years of meditation on a thought, I'm ready to write a 45-page paper on it.
There you go.
And publish it. And then I want to talk about it and tell everyone about it.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm not actually going to do much work
Yeah.
to make that happen. People are just going to magically show up, and like 4 different people are going to ask, hey, Father Ambrose, do you want to give a talk? And I'm like, I've got this thing
Yeah.
that I want to talk about. So 4 different people are going to get this talk now. Well, at least, 4 different, actually. So 1 podcast, Theology on Tap, a talk at the college ministry night up at Hillsdale College, and a academic conference.
There you go.
We're all getting the same
talk.
Yeah.
Which is based on your paper.
Which is about like gender transition and Pope Francis and creation and what does it mean to be in nature.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is
it's wild. If you're in Dayton, Theology on Tap, January 2nd, Thursday, 7 p.m.
Yeah, I would definitely probably prefer catching the speech version rather than the 45-page version. Although I don't
a lot of footnotes.
A lot of footnotes, yeah.
Over like 120.
Oh wow, dang, that's awesome. All right, well, so like, so talking about the importance of brotherhood and how there's like the cost feature into that. What would you say is like one thing that, kind of wrapping up the podcast here in a minute, like, what one thing or a couple things that you feel like you want to grow in as like a man pursuing the Lord, pursuing brotherhood? What comes to mind there?
Yeah, there's a number of things there. So just continued commitment to it is really, really important. Like I said, that intentionality, that time, really easy to get caught up in the things that I'm doing, especially as that number of things has increased.
Yeah.
And so continuing to make that time, let's talk about a particular vice in this regard that I've struggled with. I have a real attachment to and overinflated opinion of my own cleverness, my own desire to be perceived as funny and clever and witty, which can definitely break down into a utilitarian view of others, where I'm looking to
utilitarian.
Utilitarian.
Oh.
Utilitarian. Utilitarian is funny, and I'm going to use that and figure out what that means in a minute now.
I'm like some connoisseur of chili.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But only using other guys as a props to chill. Right, utilitarian.
Utilitarian. So
yeah, but utilitarian approach where like I'm using this friendship as a way to feel better about myself, as a way to like look for opportunities to tell jokes and have other guys laugh.
Yeah.
To prop up my sense of self, which can lead to pridefulness in speech. That can lead to not being willing to listen, really meet guys where they're at. Can really lead to not saying appropriate things at the right time.
Yeah.
Right. Like the guy doesn't need a joke right now. He needs something different, but I want to be funny. And
Sure.
so, right, like there's a lot of different ways in which that pride can break down that authentic fraternity. And it's always the constant tension that all of us face, which is the service of ourselves versus the loving service of others. It takes a confidence and a real deep knowledge of self-worth coming from God's love for me, and a confidence in friendship as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't need to win friendship from other guys.
Yeah.
They're like I know that I'm loved. I know that this is my friend. I don't have to prove that I'm funny
Right.
to get him to like me, right? Like a lot of those things are going on deep down inside psychologically.
Yeah.
And so I really think ways that have been really good for me to grow in those are just, first of all, just the practical demands of having a friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot.
There's a lot. And so just letting that reality be a thing and not something that I try to control, something that I accept.
Yeah.
Like, no, my buddy can't meet with me today. That's fine.
Yeah.
And then also
I think there's like a disillusionment with that, like because of the way we grow up. Because like it comes easy when we're growing up. Or like you have two brothers?
Two brothers, yeah, and a sister who's also great.
And it's like when you have like that built in at home, right? Like
that's right.
You don't have to think about it too much, and you got that friendship. But then you get out in the real world, and it's just like, shoot, like this, this requires.
It's been over years since I've seen my like the next youngest brother. Like we were 3 years apart. We were practically the same person, and now I like never see him because he lives in Illinois.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, like there's that barrier like with natural like friendships with your siblings now, but like even more so like when we go out to like make new friendships, like our minds go back, oh, it was easy then, like it should be easy now, and then like we turn it off pretty quickly when it's like, oh, this is actually kind of hard. Like you're saying like, oh, my buddy can't meet with me today. I guess I'll have to put up with that. Like,
Yeah. And so accepting that humility and then not viewing it as a threat to the relationship.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the temptations, right? Like it's a wound to my pride that my friendship doesn't conform to my plan for it.
Yeah.
And then just rolling with that, still being friends, still like recognizing the autonomy of the other, and then being willing to love anyway in the midst of those types of things, right? Like that's one of the things where really truly accepting that in a spirit of patience, because like, yeah, my buddy couldn't meet with me today is not a big thing.
Yeah.
Right? But it is specifically those little things where real great humility comes.
Yeah.
And true friendship develops. But then also with God and the self, like gratitude is so important. Like the more that I thank God for individual things, it's not that I'm like doing something extra outside of the necessary to recognize God as the source of all good things in my life, like he is.
Yeah.
And the list of things that I do not give thanks to God for are the list of things where I haven't recognized reality.
Yeah.
Because all of those things are gifts from God, even the things that hurt me.
Yeah.
Which is tough. And in fact, even the things that I've given thanks for, I've not sufficiently given thanks for. There's nothing that I can do that sufficiently gives thanks to God for the gifts that I've received. And so that process of gratitude builds that trust where like God is taking care of me. I am loved by God. Because that's reality. Christ is king. He is giving me all of these graces, whether I recognize them or not. And so then that provides the confidence to really love in a non-selfish way that creates the real fraternity without me having to grasp for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. It's just like, yeah, it gives you that why, the motivation to actually pursue good, authentic friendship. I think it's really, to go back to your first point though, like of wanting to grow and like having guys see you in a certain way. I feel like this is such a struggle for a lot of guys. It's like I want to prove that I am the guy, or like I am like a bro. I am like, you know, fill in the blank here. And so many times it's a stumbling block for guys is like to be seen in the right way. And it comes back to what you're saying. Like there's this, you have to have this radical acceptance of like, no, like God loves me. And then a trust that like, even if I'm not funny, even if I don't say something that's witty, even if I don't have something that's remotely intelligible to say, right? Like this person's still going to accept me, and that's hard because it's like we've experienced times where that hasn't been the case.
Right, and we like roles.
Yeah,
we do. Guys love having a role, like this in the military.
Yeah,
right. Like I've got a job. This is me. I'm this guy. I'm the bring this type of cocktail to a party guy. I am the nerd out about cars and engineering guy, right? Like we love those social roles, and we like to fit into social roles so that we know how to interact with each other.
Yeah.
But those are always limiting, and those always don't fully describe us. And having to play the part of who I think that I'm supposed to be for my friends, especially in the ways in which our social interactions are shaped by social media. Really, 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 really becomes a struggle. Yeah,
and it's like the constant like trying to play the role not only like leaves you stressed out and like exhausted because you're like, I got to do the next thing, but it also like leaves you empty because it's like you're not actually in real relationship.
It's funny because it is real. It's just you have really made yourself less than who you are in order to appear a certain way. Right? Like this is one of my like overarching theories that I've been chewing on for 10 years. I'm not quite ready to give 4 talks on it yet.
All right.
But the preview version is like we don't wear different masks in different social situations.
Okay.
Every single one of those is us. Like I am the kind of person who can act nice but really be mean.
Yeah.
Like that's me. Yeah. There's not some other me out there. That's just I've created like a real small version of myself.
Have you studied any parts theory or IFS, internal family systems theory?
No.
Okay, that's what you're describing.
Nice. I love reverse engineering things that other people have thought about.
Yeah, no, I think if you read it, like you probably see like, okay, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah. No, you are not. You don't have 2 different masks. You're just two-faced.
Yeah.
Which is a rough thing to to think about.
Yeah, because it's like you are duplicitous, right? Like
Yeah.
you have these multiple sides that you need to like rein in and like bring back into unity with who you actually like.
But there's also a virtue there,
Yeah.
right? Like the St. Paul, all things to all people that I might save some, right? Like,
Yeah.
And so there's a real way in which that's genuine and virtuous, and then there's a false way in which it's a distortion of the self and not an application of the self in authentic charity to whoever you're with in whatever situation.
Have you ever? I'll say one more thing, and then we gotta wrap it up.
I know, right?
We can do.
We always knew this was going to be a danger.
Yeah, we can do another episode sometime.
It'd be fun, for sure.
Dr. Gary Crete, have you heard of him? He's a
No.
Catholic psychologist. He used the Avengers to talk about the parts theory.
Fun.
And he, like exactly what you're saying. Like there's like a good, right? Captain America, he's strong, or he's noble, but he's also really naive, right?
Yeah.
Or like the Hulk, he's like super strong, but like he can like get angry, right? And like in a rage. And so, yeah, what you're saying, like there's always like that virtuous part, and then there's like the vice part. I wanted to thank you for agreeing to sit down and chat. I've had a really good time talking.
Super fun.
Is there? So I know you were on Twitter for a while. You're still on Twitter?
Not for Advent.
Not for Advent,
but I will
okay.
be come the birth of our Lord.
All right, there we go. Do you want people to follow you on Twitter?
Not particularly, but if you're interested in doing so, my handle is Honey Tongue Muse. So St. Ambrose is the honey tongue saint. There's this legend about bees leaving a drop of honey on his tongue when he was an infant because of how sweet and nourishing his preaching is.
Okay.
Right. So, and he's the muse, so to speak, right? Like his theology is one of the things I'm studying for my doctorate. So Honey Tongue Muse is my Twitter handle.
Honey Tongue Muse. I'll probably I'll look you up and throw that in the show notes.
Yeah, that's probably be good. It is all words that you can spell, but it is interesting
Honey
and weird.
Tongue Muse. Just Muse. M-U-S-E.
Correct. Yeah, like
Okay.
the band.
Sweet. Like the band? Oh.
Muse. You don't. Come on.
I don't. I'm very musical illiterate.
That's fine.
You can ask my wife. But
I will.
Thank you for being here, Father Ambrose. Thank you for everyone
Always a
who's
pleasure.
listening. Yeah. If you have.
Just thanks be to God. This is great.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah, it's good to be around men. It's one of the exciting things about this project is just talking to good men. And I just wanted to encourage folks, as guys are listening to this, like, if it's been a help to you, like it, share it, subscribe. Helps us get found on the algorithm. Helps other Catholic guys find this if they're just got a pretty strong Catholic guy feed. The more we can get this in the algorithm, the better. So
yeah, the real good Catholic masculinity stuff, not like the fake people who tell you that you can't love your wife because that's gay or whatever.
I don't know what you're alluding to at all.
You said that I was on the internet. I am way too online.
Yeah.
Other people who are way too online will know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's bad stuff. Do the good stuff.
Do the good
authentic
stuff.
masculinity.
All right. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you next time. God bless.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Oh, well. That's what happens.